Welcome to Wellness, your ultimate guide to unlocking your full human potential through biohacking. I'm your host, Ashley Daly. I'm a certified sports nutrition coach and former personal trainer and Pilates instructor, and I have a degree in kinesiology. My goal is to help improve and elevate the quality of your life. When you leave a review on any app that you're listening or watching this podcast on, it helps make a positive difference because it helps listeners just like you find this hidden health information faster. I wanted to create a special episode just on jet lag because, as most of you know, my husband and I are doing long distance and I travel quite often to see him. I've been implementing some hacks that I think you'd be interested in. Some of these hacks are new and some of them are tried and true, which I've been using for years. One of the problems with jet lag, besides jet lag in general, is that you become dehydrated. And anyone who has flown knows what that dry, stale air feels like. So one of my top tips is to never drink fluorinated water. Fluoride is more electronegative than oxygen. So before your flight, don't consume tap water or use it in toothpaste because you're stealing electrons from your body and you need as much oxygen as you could possibly have on the plane. But I might be getting too far ahead of myself. So let's start with temperature regulation because the things you do 3 days before your flight can make a huge impact on whether you have jet lag or not. What we'll start out with is temperature minimum. I learned a lot about this on Andrew Huberman's podcast. It's pretty scientific, but I'm going to try to break it down in layman's terms. Your temperature minimum is the lowest point of your body temperature within a 24-hour cycle, and it typically occurs about 2 hours before your natural wake-up time. Meaning, if you usually wake up at 6:30, your temperature minimum is going to occur around 4:30. And here's the powerful part and why it relates to jet lag, because you can use light and movement to shift your internal clock. Getting bright light, engaging in movement, or eating in the 2 to 6 hours after your temperature minimum will advance your internal clock, making you want to go to sleep and awake earlier. This is what you want to do when you're traveling east. Doing these things 2 to 6 hours before your temperature minimum will delay your clock, making you want to sleep and wake up later. And this is for traveling west. Since I travel frequently from New York to London, I need to advance my internal clock. 3 days before my flight, I start waking up an hour earlier, usually at 5 a.m., and I get bright light into my eyes immediately. But you might be asking, well, Ash, how do you get bright light into your eyes at 5 a.m.? I don't use fluorescent or any kind of junk lighting in my house. But what I do want to mention is the Theralux. This is a high-intensity lamp that offers 22,600 lux for situations just like mine, where natural light is unavailable. The lamp provides full spectrum light without UV rays, mimicking natural sunlight. So if I do a short recap, this means at least 3 days before I travel to London, I'm going to be waking up earlier, working out earlier, and eating earlier so I can start to adjust my internal clock. I also avoid carbs, sugar, and alcohol 3 days before my flight. Alcohol is one of my no-brainers, not going to do it kind of regimens when I'm on the plane. Now, before I even get to the airport, one of my non-negotiables is also wearing a hat and blue blockers. I want to keep that junk light from the airport off of my skin and body. I'll also wear long-sleeved clothing so my skin isn't absorbing the harsh lighting in the airport. When you fly, you become dehydrated and a little bit stressed out. That's why hydration is one of the key factors that is an absolute must when you're flying. When you're oxygenated and hydrated, it helps you stay focused. And this means your energy isn't going to your gut to consume the food that you've been eating on the plane, but rather you get to stay strong and mentally focused. I also don't eat on the plane if it's domestic. One of the reasons I fast on the plane for as long as I can is because it allows my body to enter a state of autophagy, where it focuses on cellular repair rather than digestion. This conserves oxygen and energy for cognitive function and immune support. If you have to eat on the plane, don't eat grains or carbohydrates, as they block the absorption of water in your body, dehydrating you even more than you already are from just taking the flight. If you must eat, Only consume protein and vegetables if you have the opportunity. Some of my favorite recommendations are going to be the Epic beef jerky bars. I take these with me on every flight. I'll also pack my own hard-boiled eggs and real fruit and vegetables like carrots, pears, bell peppers, whatever I can find. And then I also eat organic pistachios as well as macadamia nuts. And I only try to eat on the local time. So for my next flight, when I leave to London, I'm leaving at 8:30 at night, which is 1:30 in the morning. So you can bet I won't be eating when I get on that flight. The first thing I'll be doing is sleeping, but that comes a little bit later. So if you can handle it, which I think you can because you are stronger, wiser, and capable of more than you know, I would highly recommend fasting on a flight. Now, since you're not eating on a flight, unless it's a really long flight, then hydration is the number one key priority when it comes to feeling refreshed when you land. I already mentioned fluoride is more electronegative than oxygen. And when you consume fluoride, you're stealing electrons from your body. And at altitude, you need every bit of oxygen you can get. When I fly, I use my Eco Hydrogen water bottle to have hydrogenated water. But if you're going to buy bottled water, if you can, look for it in a glass bottle. Or if you're using your own water bottle, you can use the filtered hydration station. One of my other non-negotiables is that I always pack Quinton essential minerals. There are a lot of mineral companies on the market, and I don't trust any of them except Quinton. Quinton is the only one that's unadulterated. It comes in glass ampules as well as little sachets for traveling. It doesn't have titanium dioxide, which I would never drink. What I do with these Quinton minerals is I take one of these vials every hour on the hour. These are the ultimate source of electrolytes. I know I've spoken about a few things to do and not to do, but this is probably a great time to mention that I would never take LMNT, Liquid IV, or any of those electrolyte powders. All you need is Quinton. You can buy these on Amazon. You can buy them on Water and Wellness /Deely. These are my number one recommendation when it comes to traveling. I would never, ever take a flight without taking my Quinton with me. Quinton minerals help get more circulation throughout your blood, and that's what you want, the oxygenation, hydration, circulation. You want to keep things moving when you're on a flight. That's why I stand up every hour on the hour. Oh my gosh, people who get on flights and sit there for the whole duration, anywhere from 3 to 6 or more hours, I genuinely don't know how they do it. Movement is one of the most important things to keep your body feeling refreshed when you are on the flight as well as when you land. It's about getting your lymphatic system moving. My rule is that I get up and I move every hour on the hour. And I also drink 8 to 10 ounces of water every hour on the hour. And I'll include one of those Quinton minerals every time I drink water. This is also a good time to mention that I always sit in the aisle seat, and if I can avoid it, never the middle or the window seat, as the window seats expose you to cosmic rays and higher radiation. And if you follow me in my podcast, you know I try to limit my exposure to electromagnetic frequencies. It's also another reason that I won't sit in the emergency exit row. It might also sound a little woo-woo, but one of the things I do to stay grounded on the plane is I'll take my shoes and socks off. Oh, I know it sounds so bad. You guys are probably like, gross, you take your socks off. My favorite neurosurgeon, Jack Kruse, says to take your shoes and socks off, and where that footrest is in front of you, put your feet on the metal footrest. I know not every airplane has one of these footrests, so if you don't have it, you can keep your shoes and socks on. Okay, so we've spoken about what to do 3 days before your flight, what to do on your flight in terms of food and water, and we've spoken about movement and where you can strategically sit on the plane. The next thing that we'll get into that I always wear on my flight are my blue blockers. There are so many different trustworthy brands that I believe in. These are my VivaRays, which I absolutely love. I have a few others on my website, but as long as your blue blockers at least have a yellow tint, you're gonna be in good shape. My favorite thing about these, as the sun is beginning to set, I'll use an orange overlay. And then when the sun has finally set, I'll use my deep red filter. This is a non-negotiable for me, flying and using my blue blockers. When I get to London, it'll be morning, so I won't be wearing them. But to help me sleep the next night when I am in London, you can be sure that I will be wearing my blue blockers. We've also talked about how dry it is in the plane. So one of the things that I want to make sure that you do if you wear contact lenses is to not wear them while traveling. Sunlight plays a huge role in impacting your ability to recover from jet lag. And if you're covering your cornea with contacts, you're not going to get essential light directly into your system. Your cornea is translucent and it has no blood vessels in it. The only way that you can get oxygen in your eyes is in the air. But there's a caveat here. I do not recommend using the little airflow knob above your seat to have air blowing on your face the entire time. Part of that air is mixed with engine air, and you don't want to be breathing that in. The air from the overhead vents is a mix of cabin air and engine air, which contains higher level of VOCs, volatile organic compounds, and lower oxygen concentrations. I know we're on the topic of eyes and cornea, but inhaling this air directly can introduce toxins into your system and reduce oxygen availability. So keep that vent closed and focus on other oxygenation strategies, such as breath work, humming, and movement. Matthew Walker, the author of Why We Sleep, talks about how people get it wrong on the flight when it comes to sleep because they will stay awake for the first half of air travel and then fall asleep towards the end. And if you have a long flight, you're wanting to fall asleep earlier on and then stay awake from that point forward. If it's a long flight, Matt says you need at least 12, 14, or even 16 hours of healthy sleepiness to fall asleep and stay asleep. While you won't get a full night's sleep on the plane in a very long flight, the lingering sleep deprivation will help you fall asleep a bit more naturally later the following evening when you land in a new time zone. One of the first things I'll do when I'm on a flight is change my screen to a deep orange or red hue. Besides wearing my blue blockers, I want to make sure that my body will start producing melatonin, and blue light suppresses melatonin. This is why it's extremely important to change the face of your device to orange, red, and wear your blue blockers. Flying is all about oxygenation, hydration, circulation, and taking care of your mitochondria. And excessive blue light damages your mitochondria, which impairs your ability to make energy for cells. If you're taking an evening flight or a red eye, fluorescent bulbs are the worst. Bright blue light tells your body what time it is, and nighttime exposure scrambles your sleep schedule by interfering with your melatonin production. That's one of the reasons flying messes with your circadian rhythm. The light in the airport and the light in the airplane is seriously junk light, which can mess with your biology. So when you change the light on your screen and you wear blue blockers, this is where you're going to see a significant change in your sleep, as well as hopefully feel a little more refreshed when you land. Now you might be asking, well, Ash, can't I just melatonin to fall asleep? I do not recommend melatonin for regular use. I know this is an unpopular opinion and I have used it extensively before, but I have since learned from Dr. Jack Kruse that melatonin can destroy photoreceptors in the eye and thin your retinal lining. I want to have healthy eyes for as long as possible. This is also why I drink caffeine in very minimal doses, and I have given up my daily coffee ritual, mostly because of the book Caffeine Blues, but that's also probably a podcast for another time. But I do not recommend melatonin unless you're flying, just like Dr. Jack Kruse recommends. There's only one brand of melatonin that I recommend, which is going to be one of the ones from Synchronicity Health. It's a nasal spray, which makes it really easy to take right before bed or the bedtime that you're hoping to achieve while on the flight. You can also take the Sandman suppository from Mitozen. I'll link everything in the show notes so you can find it, but you should know that those suppositories are high dose and should only be used for jet lag. One last thing I forgot to mention, since we're still talking about sleep, is that I don't wear black clothing when I travel, and I don't wear any of the EMF protection clothing when I travel either. because I've had someone on my show, Ryan Blazer from Test My Home, who spoke about when he wore his anti-radiation, anti-Wi-Fi, and EMF clothing. He said he felt horrible wearing it, and he felt like it turned his body into an antenna to attract EMFs. This is why I won't wear any of the EMF blocking clothing, and I try to stay away from black when I travel because it can attract EMFs. I'm going to keep taking little breaks and talk about what we've covered in each section. So we've talked about avoiding airplane food, sugar, alcohol, drinking hydrogen water, fasting if you can to promote autophagy, avoid caffeine, only taking melatonin when you need it on long flights, avoiding EMF clothing, knowing where to sit in the flight, not wearing contact lenses, avoiding the vents overhead, making sure you're wearing your blue blockers and changing your screen colors on your device. And most importantly, I'll keep saying it again, oxygenation, hydration, and circulation. One of the reasons you feel so trashed when you land is that your body's in a sympathetic state and you want to try to calm your nervous system down if you can. So there's a few supplements and tactics that we can get to get through that flight in a calm parasympathetic state. One of the first things you can do is breath work. I enjoy 4-7-8 breathing by Dr. Andrew Wiel. You can also do humming. Humming can help stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system. You can also do palming as long as you don't mind people looking at you. That's where you put your hands over your eyes and make sure there's absolutely no light coming in, feeling nice and relaxed. And you could hum at the same time. You can also try meditation, reading a book, anything that helps make you feel relaxed, besides alcohol. One of the other tools that I have in my toolkit for jet lag is NuCalm. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about NuCalm during this jet lag special episode. NuCalm is a game changer. It's a neuroacoustic tool used by special ops in the military, law enforcement, executives, CEOs, athletes, and even everyday regular people like you and me. NuCalm is unlike anything you've ever tried before. It's a meditation app, but it's so much more than that. Calling it a meditation app is one of the biggest understatements. It can shift you into a parasympathetic state in about 10 to 20 minutes. It's also FDA cleared for depression, insomnia, and anxiety. I recommend it to anyone who has sleeping issues, but also for jet lag. It's the world's first and only technology clinically proven to lower stress and improve sleep quality. Besides fasting, drinking water, and moving on a plane, getting into a parasympathetic state and feeling less stressed is key. This is why I always pack my big over-the-head earphones and use NuCalm. This isn't an ad for NuCalm either. I've been using NuCalm for over 5 years, and I use it when I need help relaxing, recovering, managing stress, or if I haven't slept well, I always use the NuCalm. Now that we're on the topic of wearing things and adding things to your flight, one of the things that I always wear is my Apollo Neuro. Yes, it uses Bluetooth, and it's the only device I use which uses Bluetooth, but as soon as I turn Bluetooth on to activate it, I immediately turn it off. I know it's still projecting EMFs, but this handy little wearable reduces stress and moves my body into a parasympathetic state. All I do to activate it is, I told you, I turn on the Bluetooth, but then you can just put it on your wrist or your ankle to activate it. The Apollo doesn't track anything. It just delivers good vibrational sensations into your body. And it improves your heart rate variability, or HRV. It utilizes low frequency sound waves felt as soothing vibrations. Again, not an ad and not something I wear every day, but I'll put everything in the show notes so you can find what I use to help bring my body into a more parasympathetic state. The next thing I have to mention, although it is a bit big, is it's funny, but I always bring my KAATSU with me when I travel because this works on oxygenation and circulation. If you haven't heard of the KAATSU, I have an episode about it with the founder. which I'll link to in my show notes. But the KAATSU has 2 leg bands and arm bands that you put around your legs and your arms, and it works kind of like blood flow restriction therapy, but in a much more advanced way. The reason I use KAATSU on the plane is definitely for the oxygenation and circulation of the blood throughout my body, but it also promotes beneficial metabolic and hormonal responses, which can help align your circadian rhythm and reduce fatigue. One of the other things that I use while flying, although it may look funny, but at this point, I don't really care how I look on a flight as long as I'm feeling good when I land, is I will use my intranasal VieLight. So I know it looks funny, but I will just turn this handy dandy little device on. You won't see any red light. It's just infrared light, but red and near infrared light delivered through the nasal passage can enhance mitochondrial function and reduce neuroinflammation. It's also especially helpful after you land, as it can improve your mitochondrial function and energy production. The reason I wear it on the flight and get red light straight to my brain is because my neurons need oxygen to function properly. And you already know you're pretty dehydrated on a plane and you're not moving as much as you should be. So inadequate blood flow to the brain has been linked to several dysfunctions, including depression and anxiety. And according to preclinical findings, the VieLight can also help with neurogenesis, or the creation of new neurons. Okay, so we've spent some time on how to get your body into a parasympathetic state by breath work, humming, using the NuCalm, the Apollo Neuro, meditating, reading a book, and then we've shifted gears into a few devices like the KAATSU and the VieLight. Now we're going to move into supplements. I know I've spent some time on Quinton and Melatonin, but there's a whole stack when it comes to my jet lag protocol, or anti-jet lag protocol. B6 is definitely a supplement that I recommend because it aids in the production of serotonin, a neurotransmitter which is converted to melatonin. So you can take B6 before you sleep, and it can hopefully reduce jet lag. One of the other supplements you can take on the plane is 5-HTP. It's a precursor to the neurotransmitter serotonin, kind of like B6, and it's taken to help with conditions such as anxiety and panic disorders. Also take glycine, which is an essential amino acid and plays a role in a ton of bodily functions. It can protect against oxidative stress, which is one of the key factors you're wanting to eliminate when flying. It also acts as a neurotransmitter in the brain, promoting relaxation and reducing stress. Since you're wanting to reduce and minimize your oxidative stress while flying, there are some antioxidants that I would recommend, bar none. The first one is going to be My Vital C. These are handy because they come in pill form. I always travel with My Vital C. This is the company that uses the molecule ESS60, which is basically, I'm going to say personally, like a fountain of youth. I'll tell you a quick story. Shout out to my friend Tara. Her dog had surgery, wasn't eating, wasn't walking. She asked if I had any recommendations. I told her she had to get My Vital C ESS60, and as soon as her dog took it, she was walking and eating the next day. ESS60 from My Vital C is packed full of antioxidants. That's why it's one of my first no-brainers when I fly. I know I have a lot of no-brainers and non-negotiables. Maybe I'll try to pack them into a list at the end so it's a nice, easy list for you to go to and say, okay, these are Ashley's non-negotiables. One of the other things that I will use is astaxanthin. I know there's a lot of different forms, but the cleanest one that I found is in this liquid tincture from a company called Lux Beauty. It's actually something I take every day. It can also help protect your eyes, so it made it to the list of one of my antioxidants to take while traveling. I also absolutely cannot live without and would not travel without my NAD and my glutathione. These are so easy to travel with, you guys. They're so small. I'm actually trying to see how much. Oh, they're 10 milliliters. They're so small. This is from Synchronicity Health. I had the founder on my show. I will put a link in the show notes. These are hands down the cleanest supplements that I've ever found for NAD and glutathione. I take them whether or not I travel, but Synchronicity Health is my go-to when it comes to purchasing glutathione, NAD, melatonin. They have reishi products. They have so many clean products. It's my number one favorite supplement company. If you're not familiar, glutathione is the body's master antioxidant. And since flying is incredibly stress-inducing, glutathione is your frontline defense for detoxification and immune support, especially since you have that engine air flying around. Glutathione can also help you fight off infections. So if you're boarding a plane not feeling good, glutathione is the first line of defense that I would recommend. It neutralizes harmful free radicals. Also, none of this is medical advice. I'm an N of one. What works for me may not work for you. This is not absolutely must-do advice. This is experiment at your own risk. The reason I take NAD is because of the anti-inflammatory properties, but also because it can reduce chronic pain, inflammatory conditions. NAD is involved in energy production, and supplementing with it can boost energy levels and reduce fatigue. There is no easier way to take glutathione and NAD rather than these little nasal sprays. I know if you take them in a pill form, it has to pass through your liver, as known as the first pass, and a lot of times it can be destroyed. This is why using the nasal sprays is an absolutely non-negotiable no-brainer for me. You can also use other antioxidants as vitamin C. I use one from Symbiotica. It comes in a little pouch that I just slurp right up. You can also take NAC, N-acetylcysteine, CoQ10, and absolutely fish oil. Fish oil could be a whole topic on its own, but there's only one brand of fish oil that I recommend. It's from Body Bio. It's cold pressed. Unless you're eating caviar, this is the only fish oil that I recommend. And I have done hours and hours of research. I've had experts on my show who recommend different fish oil. This is the only one that I recommend. One of the reasons I take fish oil is to reduce any kind of joint pain or inflammation. Sometimes I'll get achy knees from crossing my legs so many times. I should probably just be getting up and moving. But fish oil can help lubricate your joints and reduce inflammation. It's also another reason I take glucosamine. Don't worry, you guys, I'll have a list of all the supplements in the show notes, I promise. I also can't believe I didn't mention methylene blue or bring it with me. I store it in 2 different places in my home. I take it almost every day. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I almost did this episode without mentioning methylene blue. First of all, when you take methylene blue, you want to make sure that you take it with at least 1 gram or 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C, as it helps with the absorption. Methylene blue can increase mitochondrial function by 30%. That means when you land, you should be feeling good. Also, it's imperative to note that methylene blue can act as a stimulant, so you don't want to take it before bed or before you sleep. Bed, sleep, you know what I mean. I'll make sure to break down the supplements that you can take during your flight to help keep you awake or energized, as well as supplements for sleep or supplements that you can take across the board anytime that don't have a stimulating effect. The reason I take methylene blue is because it's an antioxidant, it's neuroprotective, it has antidepressant properties, and it's known for treating neurodegenerative diseases. It can also be used as a side note for constant urinary tract infections or bladder infections, as well as constant canker sores. I have an episode with Dr. Tom Rogers, episode 71, where we dive into all things methylene blue. This is not something that I would recommend taking for the first time. You want to make sure that you take it a few times to know how you react to it. And just for a reminder, you will have blue urine after taking it. Long haul flights can leave your body feeling sore or stiff, and this is why I use a CBD suppository. I've noticed when I take the suppository, I don't have as much knee or joint pain. CBD can also help soothe anxiety and stabilize your mood. It's been shown to have a calming effect on your central nervous system. And since we're all a little stressed when we fly, we could probably use some of that calming effect. You'll just want to know the laws of where you're taking CBD. Okay, now one of the biggest hacks that you can use, which probably requires the most effort, but I heard one of my favorite physicians, he's known as the smartest physician on the planet, I hope I'm saying his name right, Ted Akoso? I don't know. I hope I'm not butchering it too bad. but he uses a portable oxygen concentrator when he travels. And did you know the FAA recommends pilots use supplemental oxygen above 6,000 feet at night and 10,000 during the day? Supplementing with oxygen on a plane is one of the biggest biohacks that you could implement. When you're running on low oxygen, you can experience cognitive impairment, fatigue, and decreased night vision. This is why pilots use it. There's a few restrictions when it comes to traveling with a portable oxygen concentrator. Some airlines require you to tell them that you're traveling with one. And there's also a link for certified, approved portable oxygen concentrators. People do this all the time. I'll link in the show notes so you can find exactly which ones are approved by the FAA. This does sound like a very laborious biohack, but an oxygen concentrator is one of the best biohacks that you can use because during flights, the cabin pressure is lower than on the ground, similar to the altitude of an 8,000-foot mountain. The lower pressure can reduce the amount of oxygen which reaches your bloodstream. And remember, we've been speaking about oxygenation, hydration, and circulation this entire time. So when you have a low amount of oxygen in your bloodstream, it can make you feel lethargic and worsen your symptoms of headache and fatigue, and of course, jet lag. But an oxygen concentrator can help you by providing more oxygen to your system. We've already talked about how jet lag is caused by the disruption of your body's internal clock and how we're implementing all these tools to try to change it. But oxygen, supplementing with oxygen, might be the most powerful. You just want to make sure it's FAA approved and you have enough battery power, and in some cases, you've alerted the airline that you're bringing one with you. They're so easy to find, you can just buy them on Amazon. I'll put a couple links below to the FAA approved ones. One of the other hacks we haven't mentioned yet is hormones, and I didn't know whether to put that into the supplementation chapter or not, but we will get into a few of the hormones that you can take. So as a female, I take progesterone to help me sleep, and I always take it with me on a flight if I'm going to be sleeping on that flight, no matter what. If you're a female who's starting to have erratic periods or they've stopped altogether, such as menopause, one of the game changers for you is going to be taking estrogen. Estrogen can help alleviate achy joints, arthritis, and that overall feeling of just being uncomfortable on a plane. One of the other supplements is DHEA. DHEA is one of the most abundant circulating hormones in the bloodstream, but it usually decreases with age. DHEA can reset your circadian clock. The most effective concentrations and studies that we have are in mice, but you could start supplementing with a 5 milligram dose. I don't recommend more than 15 if you're a female, but if you're a male, I think you can do between 30 and 50. It's produced in the adrenal gland, gonads, and brain, and it's a precursor for testosterone and estrogen. Also, didn't mention the Time Shifter app. This is something that can help remind you of some top flying tips to avoid jet lag. So definitely check out the free app Time Shifter. So as a short recap from here, there are hormones and supplements that you can take to help beat jet lag, as well as one of the biggest ones being a portable oxygen concentrator. Now we can move into peptides, which I know there are a lot of. I'm only going to mention one today. It's DSIP. I'll put a link in the show notes. It's deep sleep inducing peptide. If you know how to make peptides, you know that they need refrigeration. So when you land, DSIP is one of the peptides that I will make fresh. And I'll use it in nasal form to help me sleep when I get to my destination. One of the other things I'll do when I get to my destination is grounding or earthing. Or the best possible thing that you can do, depending on where you're going, is to get into a body of water. This is the ultimate Faraday cage and ultimate source of earthing or grounding. Earthing right after a flight has a measurable physiological difference. It can lower your cortisol by 35% and reduce inflammation markers like ESR and speed wound healing by 200%. I talk about this in episode 100 of why you should be incorporating grounding or earthing as a daily or weekly practice. Grounding literally helps your body recover faster, and I can't think of anything better than touching the ground upon landing. And studies have been shown you can literally see people's stress level lowering when they're grounding. Some of my other hacks, which we haven't mentioned, which probably everyone does, is wearing earplugs. I use silicone earplugs to block out the noise and reduce stress. I also wear an eye mask that has a built-in metal frame around the nose, so I make sure there's no light coming in. I wear my hat. I cover myself up. I have a neck pillow that I use. What else? Oh my gosh. Oh, and wear loose clothing. I am not really going to talk about deep vein thrombosis today or compression socks because I have conflicting views on it, but that's something up to you if you want to look into that. Also, I would be so remiss if I forgot to mention to be nice to the flight attendants. Oh my gosh, they are in the air every day. They are working with the general public, which I know can be really taxing. I'm sure you've seen it firsthand and you have your stories. So be nice to the hosties when you get on board. They'll fill your water for you with extra water if you ask for it. I know, I've done it a ton of times. I know I look like a weirdo on the plane, but that's something that I'm willing to do to make sure that when I land, I feel amazing. You guys probably also know, try not to take naps when you land in your destination if you can. Get on the local eating schedule, and most importantly, get sunlight in your eyes. Don't wear glasses, don't wear contacts or sunglasses. Wherever you are in the world, wherever you land, get natural sunlight in your eyes. You don't have to look at the sun, but just be outdoors. Try to spend time in your natural environment because sunlight, movement, and eating will have the biggest impact on how you feel. Everything will be listed in the show notes. And as always, if you found this information helpful, it would genuinely mean the world to me if you shared it with a friend or gave me a shout out on Instagram. My handle is Ashley_Deely. Until next time. Thank you so much for listening today. I know your time is limited, and I truly value that you spent it with me. Your voice matters. This podcast is presented for educational and exploratory purposes only. The published content is not intended to be used for diagnosing or treating any illnesses, disease, or disorders. Those responsible for this show disclaim any responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of this information presented by myself or my guests. Please consult with your healthcare provider before using any products or services referenced in this podcast. The content here is for informational purposes only. Episodes on the Welcome to Wellness podcast may at times cover sensitive topics, including, but not limited to, depression, suicide, 5G, nootropics, circumcisions, birth control, the Women's Health Initiative, the use of plant medicine, abortion, geoengineering, terrorism, gender, AI, and sex, drugs, and rock and roll. You are advised to refrain from listening to this podcast if you are likely to be offended or adversely impacted by any of these topics. However, if these topics interest you just may have found your tribe. The information or opinions expressed on the Welcome to Wellness show are solely the views of the individuals involved and by no means represent absolute facts. Opinions expressed by the host and the guest can change at any time. The views of my guests are solely their views, and the Welcome to Wellness show does not accept responsibility for them. Any action you take based on the information contained within this podcast is strictly at your own risk. The Welcome to Wellness host, Ashley Deely, will not be liable for any losses or damages in connection with the use of this podcast. You should take all necessary steps to ascertain the information you receive in this podcast is correct and has been verified. None of the guests or contributors on the Welcome to Wellness podcast will be responsible for your use of the information contained therein. Under no circumstances will the Welcome to Wellness show or my affiliates, partners, suppliers, licenses, or guests appearing on the show be liable for any direct or indirect consequences or damages arising from your ability or inability to access this podcast. All intellectual property rights belong to me, Ashley Deely, and include, but are not limited to, the copyright and any other rights in the design. You are permitted to use the Welcome to Wellness podcast for personal use, but not commercial use without license. You may not make recordings. If you breach these terms, you lose the right to access the Welcome to Wellness podcast, and you must destroy or return any copies of the recordings you've made. Guests on the Welcome to Wellness podcast may at times provide information or read extracts from third-party copyrighted work. The Welcome to Wellness podcast does not provide any medical or professional advice within these episodes. If you take any action or inaction as a result of the content you consume from the Welcome to Wellness podcast, this is based solely on your decision, and Ashley Deely, the Welcome to Wellness podcast host, and my guest cannot be held responsible or liable for any of the consequences of such action or inaction. Thank you.